They say legends die and peace begins. But some legends don't die. They just stop answering the call. Long before the diner, before the daughter, before the silence, there was Alpha Force. 5 humans who operated in the black between wars, where orders didn't exist and mercy was a liability. They weren't soldiers. They were solutions. Among them, one name carried through the dark like a heartbeat. Hollis. He never wanted fame. Never left survivors to tell stories. He believed in one thing, that a child's life was worth more than any government secret. Then came Kareth. Bad intel. Bad luck. An operation that saved 47 innocents and buried everyone else. When the smoke cleared, only Hollis was left. The coalition commended him in whispers, condemned him in reports, and erased his name from every file. He walked away, took nothing but a tattoo, a triangle with 3 lines. 3 promises to the ghosts he couldn't save. Safety, truth, home. He found all 3 in a woman named Sarah and a daughter named Penny. For 8 years, he believed in mornings, in laughter, in the simple rhythm of being just a man. Until an accident took Sarah, and the galaxy reminded him that peace is just the space between storms. Now he hides in plain sight, a mechanic, a cook, a single father on a forgotten station. But out there, in the silence between the stars, darkness stirs again. Children disappear. Syndicates rise. Empires plot. And somewhere in that dark, an old ghost begins to wake up. Because legends may sleep, but promises never do. Tobias Mercer never believed in fate. Not the poetic kind, anyway. The universe was too big, too chaotic, too full of malfunctioning airlocks and delayed shipments to allow anything as elegant as destiny. His life had always been about simple math. Fix the ship, haul the cargo, pay the bills, try not to die. But on the day everything changed, the wandering star hummed beneath his boots like it was holding its breath. He was elbow deep inside a crate of medical gel packs. Technically legal, practically suspicious, when the distress beacon cut through his cockpit speakers in a shrill, panicked scream. Tobias jerked upright, smashing his head against the crate lid so hard stars burst behind his eyes. He swore, rubbed his forehead, and replayed the signal. Universal emergency code. Civilian transport. Life support failing. Immediate danger. He hesitated for half a second. He shouldn't. He knew he shouldn't. Someone else could respond. Someone better equipped. Someone with less to lose, less to break, less chance of getting tangled up in whatever mess had triggered the beacon. But then the next burst of static came through, small, trembling, terrified. A child's voice somewhere behind the distortion. That was all it took. He was in the pilot's chair before he realized he'd moved. The wandering star shuddered as he angled her toward the beacon. Warning lights blinked at him like irritated insects. The cargo bay hissed as decompression seals realigned. His thrusters wheezed in protest at being pushed harder than they liked. "Come on, girl," Tobias muttered. "Just once, don't fall apart on me." The wandering star did not dignify this with a response. But she held. He dropped out of slipstream 3 clicks from the coordinates and immediately regretted it. The civilian transport was a shredded husk. Its engines flickered desperately, bleeding plasma into the void. One side of the hull was peeled open like a tin can. Debris floated in slow spirals. Panels, support rods, personal belongings, a toy sphere cracked in half. And around it moved 3 angular ships Tobias didn't recognize, sleek, dark, predatory. They fired controlled bursts into the transport, carving methodically, like they were exterminating vermin. Tobias's heart hammered once, twice, then something cold settled behind his ribs. He was witnessing a murder, and the victim was still alive. The wandering star's primitive targeting sensors pinged motion inside the ruined craft. Multiple life signs. One small, very small. A child. Tobias didn't think. He slammed the throttle. The attackers turned toward him in perfect synchronization. "Great," Tobias muttered. "Professional killers. Exactly my favorite kind of suicidal morning." They opened fire. The wandering star groaned as bolts scorched past her hull. Tobias jerked the controls, weaving, ducking, swearing under his breath. He had no business being in a firefight. His ship had no shields worth mentioning. No weapons besides a single top-mounted plasma turret more likely to annoy than injure. He did it anyway. He shoved his freighter between the attackers and the transport, blocking their line of fire. The killers hesitated, confused, then adjusted formation. They were going to go around him. Tobias made his decision in half a heartbeat. Reckless. Stupid. Entirely on brand. He rammed one of the attackers. Metal shrieked. His ship bucked like a wounded animal. Sparks rained across his console. But the hostile vessel spiraled off course, smoke trailing behind it. The other two repositioned instantly. Tobias realized he had exactly 10 seconds before they reduced him to scrap. Then that's all the time I need, he whispered. He fired the emergency grapples and tethered the wandering star to the wounded transport. The lines went taut. The two ships locked together. Then he hit the override. Airlock-to-airlock connection. Dangerous. Stupid. Possibly suicidal. But it worked. Tobias grabbed his respirator, sprinted to the airlock, and forced the manual crank until the sealed hatch groaned open. The transport's interior lights flickered in crimson pulses. Smoke curled through the corridors. The metallic tang of burnt circuitry choked the air. Bodies lay still. Talon warriors, broad-shouldered, scaled, armor torn apart by precision fire. He swallowed hard and stepped over them. Something shifted deeper in the hallway. Something small. He moved toward the sound, keeping one hand on the wall. The floor panels trembled with the impact of another blast, this one hitting the wandering star. He gritted his teeth. Please don't die yet, he whispered to his ship. Just hold together a few more minutes. He turned a corner and froze. A Talon child crouched behind a collapsed bulkhead, trembling. Her eyes were bioluminescent gold, bright even in the emergency lighting. Her skin was pale silver with faint crystalline patterns, her claws tiny but sharp. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 rotations. She looked at him with terror, so pure it sliced right through him. It's okay, Tobias said softly, kneeling. I'm human. I'm here to help. She flinched back. A Talon child's instinct, strangers equal threat. Then the worst thing that could happen, happened. Footsteps behind him. The assassins had boarded. Tobias turned instantly, shielding the girl with his body. He drew his sidearm, the cheapest model on the market, unreliable, underpowered, practically a toy compared to the attacker's gear. He fired anyway. The first assassin staggered. The second raised a pulse blade. Tobias braced himself, knowing the weapon would cut him in half. A tremor shook the ship, a hull breach opening somewhere nearby. The corridor erupted in a gale of escaping air. Tobias was thrown sideways, gripping the girl with one arm, anchoring himself with the other. The assassins were ripped backward by decompression, flailing, vanishing into the darkness. The emergency blast door slammed shut with a clang, sealing them out. Tobias coughed, dizzy, ears ringing. The child trembled violently against him, tiny claws digging into his jacket. It's okay, he whispered, breathless. I've got you. I've got you. Her voice was small, cracked. Mother says, protect Bond. I will, Tobias said. Let's get you out of here. He carried her through the wreckage, back toward the wandering star, but every step he took, every breath he drew, forced the same realization deeper into his mind. These assassins weren't pirates. They weren't raiders. They were professionals. They had targeted a Talon escort. They had targeted a Talon heir. And by rescuing her, by shielding her, by stepping into the line of fire, he had just placed himself in the center of a political storm he didn't understand. As he sealed the airlock behind them, alarms screamed through the wandering star, systems failing, engines overheating, hull at critical stress. He strapped the child into the co-pilot seat. Her eyes were still wide, glowing, fixed on him with fear, and he hated how familiar it felt, loneliness. What's your name? Tobias asked gently. She swallowed. Sarah. Velith. His blood ran cold. Velith. He knew that name. Everyone did. High Commander Ashera Velith. Brilliant, terrifying, legendary. This was her daughter, her heir, and he had just stolen her from an assassination site. Before he could react, the sensors lit up again. More ships, larger ones, closing in fast. He cursed. They called reinforcements. Sarah shook her head frantically. Not them. Not killers. Not bad ones. Then the readings clarified. Talon warships. A lot of them. 67 signatures. All moving straight toward him. Tobias stared at the display, heartbeat thundering. Sarah, are those your mother's ships? The child nodded, small and frightened. And Tobias Mercer, scrappy freighter pilot, chronic do-gooder, perpetual trouble magnet. realized he was about to have a very complicated conversation with the most powerful warrior in the Imperium. But first, he had to survive the next 60 seconds. He tightened his grip on the controls. "Okay, kid," he muttered. "Hold on." The wandering star screamed forward into the dark, toward a fleet that could crush him in an instant, toward the wrath of a mother who believed her child had been stolen, toward a destiny he had never wanted. And this was only the beginning. The wandering star shook like an angry beast as Tobias forced her engines far past anything resembling safe operation. Warning lights flickered across the console in chaotic red bursts. Somewhere deep inside the ship, something sizzled, popped, and began to smell like burning insulation. Sarah clung to her seat harness, eyes wide, glowing gold in the frantic strobe of alarms. "Are we going to die?" she whispered. Tobias didn't even think before answering. No, but the truth was sitting heavy on his tongue, because the fleet on the horizon wasn't slowing down. It wasn't hailing him. It wasn't giving him any signs of peaceful intent. 67 Talon warships, capital-class cruisers, heavy destroyers, escorts, were rushing toward the wandering star like a tidal wave of metal and rage. And every instinct Tobias had was screaming the same thing. They thought he kidnapped Sarah. This wasn't a rescue. This was a retrieval, a retribution. He needed to get ahead of their assumptions fast. He opened a channel on all active frequencies. "This is Captain Tobias Mercer of the civilian freighter Wandering Star," he said, forcing his voice into something steady. "I have your heir aboard. She is alive. She is unharmed. I am not your enemy." Static answered him. Then a second burst. Then nothing. The Talons weren't responding. Either they didn't hear him, or they heard him and didn't believe him. Tobias glanced at Sarah. "Can you contact your mother?" "Directly." Sarah hesitated, biting the inside of her cheek. She will hear. She always hears. But her soldiers, they will act first. They think only of danger, not truth. Fantastic, Tobias thought. A whole fleet of shoot first, verify later warriors. Exactly what he needed. He angled the wandering star toward an asteroid cluster, dense rocks, magnetic interference, somewhere to hide. Or at least slow down the ships on his tail. But Sarah reached out, small claws catching his sleeve. "No hiding," she whispered urgently. "They will see it as guilt." Tobias froze. Because she was right. If he dove into cover, they'd assume he was a threat. If he tried to run, they'd assume he was a kidnapper. If he charged toward them, they'd assume he was an idiot. Which, to be fair, what do we do then? Tobias asked, trying not to sound frantic. Sarah inhaled slowly. Her small chest rose. Then she whispered something in Talon, a phrase soft and trembling, like a prayer. "Bond at risk. Truth in open sky." Tobias blinked. "What does that mean?" She looked at him with those bright, ancient eyes that seemed too wise for her years. "It means we go to them. Open. Unshielded. Unarmed. No deception. No fear." Tobias stared at the approaching fleet. "That sounds a lot like suicide." Sarah nodded solemnly. "Yes." He rubbed his face. "Are all Talons like this?" "No. Only the sane ones." Tobias did not feel particularly comforted. But he had no better plan. And the girl in front of him, shaking but brave, was trusting him completely. That trust weighed more than the warships. He cut the engines down to half-burn, straightened the ship, and flew in a direct, vulnerable path toward the massive flagship at the center of the formation. The moment he adjusted course, the fleet reacted. 6 destroyers shifted position around him, forming a kill box. Missile locks pinged from multiple vectors. Targeting beams crawled over his hull like ghostly fingertips. Sarah's breath hitched. Tobias spoke into the comm again, louder this time. "I am approaching slowly. My weapons are offline. I repeat, offline. The air is safe. I found her in a destroyed transport. I am bringing her to you." Still no reply. He braced for impact that never came. Instead, the comm crackled. A voice came through, sharp as a blade dragged across stone. "Human vessel. You will cease all thrust immediately." Tobias exhaled. "Copy that. Thrust to 0. He powered down until the wandering star drifted, a leaf in a storm. Another voice joined the first, this one colder, deeper, furious beneath a veneer of command. "Identify the child." Sarah unlatched her harness with trembling hands. She leaned toward the microphone, voice so small it cracked. "I am Sarah Veleth, daughter of Asherah." A silence like the void itself followed. Then, all ships stand down. The targeting beams vanished. The missile locks turned off. The destroyers broke formation. Tobias sagged in relief, until the deeper voice returned, shaking with something that felt like barely contained rage. Human, you will prepare for immediate docking. You will not run. You will not hide. You will not resist. Tobias swallowed. Understood. The line clicked off. The flagship loomed larger in the viewport, sleek obsidian plating, glowing violet engine arrays, and the unmistakable crest of the Velith lineage carved into the prow. 2 wings crossed over a burning star. Tobias whispered to Sarah, "What's your mother like?" Sarah blinked slowly. "She is the strongest being I have ever known." "Right," Tobias muttered. "Any chance she's also forgiving?" Sarah hesitated. Very hesitated. "She tries." "Great. Perfect. Totally reassuring." A docking clamp latched onto the wandering star with enough force to make the entire ship jolt. The airlock seal indicator turned green. A message pinged on the console, "Boarding in progress." Tobias stood. His knees wobbled. "Stay behind me," he murmured to Sarah. The child shook her head, stepping in front of him with unexpected fierceness. "No. They must see me first. They must see you are protector, not captor." The airlock hissed. Steam drifted through the chamber. Bootsteps echoed. Military, synchronized, dozens of them. Tobias had expected a squad of soldiers. He had not expected the woman who emerged. Ashera Velith was a force of nature. Tall, sculpted like a blade, silver-scaled with obsidian markings. Her eyes glowed molten gold, older, sharper versions of Sarah's. Her armor was ceremonial, yet scarred from real battles. She carried no weapon. She didn't need one. Her gaze hit Sarah first. The child ran to her. Ashera dropped to one knee and caught her, pulling her into an embrace fierce enough to swallow the world. For 3 full seconds, Tobias forgot how to breathe. Because a Talon, one of the most feared warrior species in known space, was shaking. Ashera held her daughter's face between her hands and whispered something in their native tongue. Sarah pressed her forehead against her mother's. Then Ashera stood. Her gold eyes turned toward Tobias. And every instinct screamed run. He didn't. He stayed standing. Back straight. Hands at his sides. No fear. No arrogance. Just truth. Ashera stepped forward slowly, each movement controlled, lethal, precise. "You," she said, voice low. "Human." "Yes," Tobias managed. "You shielded my child." He nodded once. "You placed your body between her and death." "Yes." "You risked your life for her with no bond. No obligation. No bloodline. No gain." "Yes." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" There were 1,000 ways to answer. None safe. None smart. Tobias chose the truth. "Because she was a child," he said quietly. "And she needed someone." Silence. Long. Tense. Then something shifted in Ashera's expression, just barely. A flicker. A softening. A realization. "You are either very brave," she murmured, "or profoundly foolish." Tobias exhaled shakily. "Honestly, a bit of both." Ashera stepped closer. Close enough he could see the shimmer of heat beneath her scales. "You have complicated everything," she whispered. "I usually do," Tobias said. For the first time, Ashera looked almost amused. Then the amusement vanished. She turned sharply to her soldiers. "Escort the human to the command deck." Tobias tensed. "Wait, am I under arrest?" Ashera looked back at him with a stare that cut through bone. "No," she said. "You are under my protection." Then she added, quieter, darker. "And that may be far more dangerous." Her soldiers closed in around him. Sarah clung to her mother's side, eyes never leaving Tobias. And as he stepped into the Talon flagship, surrounded by warriors who could kill him with a flick of their claws, Tobias Mercer realized something catastrophic. He wasn't a bystander anymore. He was a variable, a catalyst, a threat to someone. Somewhere, the conspirators who had tried to kill Sarah would hear that a human had intervened, had succeeded, and their entire plan had crumbled. They would adapt. They would strike again. And when they did, Tobias would already be standing in the center of the storm. They marched Tobias through the Talon flagship in a formation so tight he could feel the heat radiating off their armor. The corridors were tall, built for warriors a head taller than him. Every metallic footstep echoed like drumbeats announcing his doom. Sarah walked beside her mother, clutching Ashera's hand with fierce determination. Every time Tobias glanced her way, she stared back with that same strange mixture of fear and absolute trust. It made his chest tighten in a way he didn't know how to process. Ashera didn't look at him again. She strode ahead with the silent intensity of someone planning 12 moves ahead, her mind already dissecting the assassination, the conspirators, the political fallout, the threat of war. And somewhere in that calculation, Tobias had become a problem. A small one, maybe, but small problems could become leverage. Weapons. Threats. When the command doors opened, Tobias felt his knees weaken. The Talon command deck was like stepping into the heart of a living storm. Holographic projections, tactical displays, dozens of officers moving in precise, predatory motions, scales shimmering under violet light. The air smelled faintly of ozone, metal, and something sharp. Adrenaline. Maybe, if adrenaline could have a scent. Every Talon froze when Ashera entered. Not because she demanded it, because she deserved it. She gestured, and Tobias was brought to the center of the room. A circular platform surrounded by monitors. A spotlight fell over him. Talon eyes glowed in unison, fixed on him with suspicion, hostility, curiosity. Sarah tugged at her mother's armor. He saved me. Ashera placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. I know. A high-ranking officer, broad-shouldered, wearing the insignia of a fleet adjudicator, stepped forward. High Commander. His voice was ice. We request permission to interrogate the human. His presence at the attack site is questionable. Denied, Ashera said instantly. The officer stiffened. With respect. Denied, she repeated without raising her voice. The officer glanced at Tobias with thinly veiled hatred. Humans are unpredictable, he said carefully. He could be working with the traitors. A ripple of energy ran through the room. Some officers murmured. Others tightened their grip on their weapons. Ashera faced them. Sarah is alive because of him. One sentence. Instant silence. But suspicion still lingered in the air like smoke. The officer bowed stiffly. We will honor your command. Then he added, quieter, darker. For now. Tobias swallowed. Yep, definitely not reassuring. Ashera motioned him closer. Stand here. He stepped onto the primary hollow platform. Ashera activated a projection of the destroyed transport, the charred hull, the ruptured decks, the frozen bodies drifting in zero gravity. Sarah flinched and pressed into her mother's side. Ashera's voice hardened into steel. Tell us everything. Tobias inhaled and told them. He explained the distress beacon, the assassins, the decompression gale, the fight in the corridor, shielding Sarah, escaping with seconds to spare. He left nothing out. When he finished, silence fell. Deep, heavy, like the entire deck was holding its breath. Ashera stepped closer until she was only a foot away, her height forcing Tobias to look up slightly to meet her eyes. Her gaze was sharp enough to peel back intentions. You acted without calculation, she said. Tobias nodded. You acted without regard for your own safety. Yes. You acted for a child who was not your species, not your obligation. Yes. Ashera studied him like he was an anomaly. Humans, she said quietly, are an enigma. The adjudicator scoffed. Humans are reckless. Another officer hissed. Or opportunistic. A third muttered. Or traitorous. Ashera silenced them with a single raised claw. Then she turned back to Tobias. This attack was not random, she said. It was deliberate. Precise. It required inside information, access codes, and betrayal at the highest levels. Tobias's stomach tightened. And you believe, he said slowly, that whoever planned this will try again. Ashera nodded once. Yes. Tobias rubbed the back of his neck. So what happens now? Ashera stepped closer, lowering her voice. Now, she said, we identify the conspirators. And me? He asked. Ashera studied him for a long, unreadable moment. You are under my official protection, she said. Which means no Talon may harm you. No officer may detain you. No faction may use you. That sounds great, Tobias said. Kind of. Ashera tilted her head. It also means the conspirators will try to kill you. Tobias blinked. Oh, that part's not as great. Ashera's expression did not change. You are now a witness. And you saved Sarah's life. That alone makes you a target. Sarah squeezed her mother's hand. He shouldn't be punished for helping me. Ashera softened, just barely, at her daughter's voice. He is not being punished. She turned back to Tobias. For now, you will remain aboard my flagship. Tobias frowned. Am I a guest? Ashera blinked slowly. More officers paused their duties to listen. She answered in a tone that felt ceremonial, heavy with political meaning. You are declared bond protected. The room froze. Every warrior stopped breathing. Tobias looked from face to face. He said, what does that mean? Ashera inhaled sharply, as if bracing herself for impact. It means, she said slowly, that harming you would be considered an attack on my daughter. Tobias's blood ran cold. And an attack on my daughter, Ashera continued, is grounds for immediate execution. Every officer bowed instinctively, acknowledging the weight of the declaration. Tobias stared. That seems like a lot. Ashera didn't blink. It is the only thing that will keep you alive. Sarah moved to Tobias's side and took his hand. You saved me. Now Mother saves you. He squeezed her hand gently. Thanks, kid. Ashera stepped back onto the center platform, activating a galaxy-wide map of Imperium space. Red markers spread like a disease along the borders. Now, she announced to her officers, voice rising, the Imperium hunts traitors. The deck erupted in motion, orders, commands, rapid redeployments. Then Ashera turned to Tobias again. While we pursue the culprits, she said, you will stay with Sarah. You will remain close. Do not leave her side. Tobias blinked. Why me? Ashera's eyes softened subtly. Because she trusts you, she said. Then her voice deepened. And because I cannot be in two places at once. Tobias opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. So you want me to babysit? Ashera's eyes flashed. Do not call it that. Sorry, Tobias said quickly. Guard duty, companion duty, emotional support duty, whatever you want to call it. Sarah leaned against him. I like being with you, she said quietly. Tobias smiled awkwardly. I like being with you too. Ashera watched them both, calculating, evaluating, silently deciding whether the universe had just handed her an unexpected weapon. Then she said something Tobias didn't fully understand until much later. In Talon culture, a bond is not given lightly. It is forged, chosen, protected. She turned away. And it is permanent. Tobias's breath hitched. Permanent. Ashera said nothing, because an alarm blared across the deck before Tobias got an answer. A Talon officer shouted, High Commander, another attack site has been discovered. Ashera's jaw clenched. Location, human territory, the officer reported. Meridian Station. A hush fell over the room. Sarah stiffened. Tobias felt the blood drain from his face. Human territory, which meant this wasn't just an attack on Ashera's family. This was bigger, wider, spreading. He looked at Ashera. She looked at him. And in that moment, both of them understood. Two civilizations were about to collide. And Tobias Mercer, freighter captain, nobody, accidental hero, was now standing at the center of a conspiracy spiraling toward war. The storm wall hit the convoy like a living thing. Tobias felt the freighter's hull groan as the pressure wave smashed across the plating. The cockpit lights flickered. Warning symbols crawled across every monitor. Thermal surge, radiation spike, hull stress at 112% and climbing. Hold together, girl, Tobias muttered, fighting the controls as the freighter pitched sideways. Just hold together. Lightning, real lightning, not plasma arcs, ripped sideways across the storm front, illuminating a monstrous, twisting column of smoke and shattered stone rising from the ground like a tower made of fury. The sky over the ancient city was a war between worlds, red, gold, black, and violet bleeding together in impossible ways. Behind him, the child clung to the safety rig, eyes glowing faintly. Your storms, they weren't like this before. Tobias shouted over the howl of the engines, though they both knew speaking wasn't required. Her mind brushed his again, soft, frightened, and ancient. The city is waking. Tobias, she added, a trembling whisper, my mother is close. Good, he gritted out. She can help us get through. But the thought broke as a gargantuan shadow tore through the clouds above them. A dreadnought. Not imperial. Not human. Not even from any known galactic record. This was the Herald's craft. The vessel dwarfed anything Tobias had ever seen. A kilometer-long shape of fossilized armor plates, bone-like ridges, and a glowing wound of light pulsing down its center. The ship didn't fly, didn't maneuver. It simply bent reality around itself. Tobias felt his vision tunnel. Every instinct, Every neuron in his brain screamed the same thing. Predator. The child stiffened, eyes widening in terror as the ship's main fracture beam carved open the storm clouds with a single searing pulse. The ancient city below glowed brighter, its defenses flickering to life. Massive geometric shields made of refracted light rising from the buried spires. "Tobias," she whispered. "I see it." Another blast fired. Another shield shattered. Another tremor rippled across the continent, shaking the freighter's hull like a tin can trapped inside a hurricane. Tobias angled the ship lower, skimming the storm front just above the ruined streets. The ancient city was fully awake now, massive towers of crystal and metal rising from beneath the sand like the bones of a forgotten titan. And on one of the rising platforms, glowing with the unmistakable light of alien magisters, stood her mother, a towering figure in ceremonial armor, surrounded by warriors of her race, each one radiating power so intense it distorted the air around them. Her eyes locked onto Tobias instantly, and the air itself seemed to split. Through the shaking of the ship, Tobias felt the absolute clarity of her intent, raw, primal, unfiltered. Protect, reclaim, destroy anything that threatens the child. His blood ran cold. Another shadow fell across them as the Herald's dreadnought opened its ventral maw. Energy spiraled inside the chamber, enough to end continents. "Tobias," the child whispered again. "He's coming." The Herald. He was descending. A shape like a man carved from refracted void steel, wrapped in a cloak of swirling particulate matter that obeyed no physics Tobias understood. His face, if it could be called that, was hidden behind a mask of fractured mirrors that reflected not the world around him, but memories. Tobias's own memories. His past. His failures. Tobias felt every breath in his lungs evaporate. He couldn't look away. He couldn't move. The child's hand slammed onto his shoulder, and a pulse of pure psychic force snapped him back into reality. "Fly," she cried. And Tobias did, jerking the freighter into a spiraling dive as the Herald struck the upper atmosphere like a falling god. The shockwave vaporized clouds, tore the storm apart, and sent a dozen airborne ruins spiraling into the abyss. Her mother leapt from the platform, an impossible, gravity-defying arc, landing on a rising spire near the freighter. Her voice echoed directly into Tobias's skull. "Bring her to me. Now." Tobias angled toward her, pushing the freighter past every safety limit it had. The engine screamed. The hull began to split at the seams. Panels blew open across the cockpit. Fire licked the flight console. And yet, the child didn't move. She stood calmly, staring upward at the Herald, who descended with perfect, effortless grace, his mask reflecting scenes from 1,000 civilizations he'd ended. "Tobias," she whispered, "when we reach my mother, I have to leave you." The words hit him harder than the storm. He said nothing, couldn't. "And I want you to know that I was never afraid when I was with you." Tobias swallowed, voice breaking. "Kid, don't say goodbye yet." But she only looked forward again, small hands glowing with light older than humanity. The mother's warriors began projecting shields as the freighter sped toward them. Behind Tobias, the Herald extended a hand. Space folded. Gravity screamed. A tendril of collapsing reality swept toward the freighter. And her mother unleashed a psychic blast so powerful it cracked the stone beneath her feet. The collision of their powers warped the sky into a kaleidoscope of impossible colors. And in the middle of that cosmic storm, the freighter dove toward the platform. The child whispered one final thing. "Tobias, thank you for saving me." The ship struck the landing platform with a bone-shattering crash. Metal tore. Glass exploded. Tobias was thrown from the pilot's seat as everything around him dissolved into blinding white light. Tobias regained consciousness to the sound of distant thunder, real thunder, not the sonic booms of plasma fire. The world around him was a haze of fractured metal, torn wiring, and the soft hum of alien energy fields. He blinked hard, vision swimming. The cockpit was gone. Half the freighter was simply missing. The other half was held together by glowing geometric plates, shields projected by the child's mother and her warriors. Tobias lay on a stabilized stretch of platform stone, surrounded by beams of shifting light that kept the wreckage suspended above a bottomless drop. His ribs screamed with every breath. His right leg refused to move. His knuckles were split open, but he was alive. A soft hand touched his cheek. He looked up. The child. She was kneeling beside him, her eyes glowing brighter than he'd ever seen. No longer soft and frightened, but steady, resolved, ancient. You stayed, she murmured, brushing dust from his face. You didn't run, even when he came. Tobias exhaled painfully. You think I'd ditch you after all that? Her lips trembled. Not quite a smile, but close. Behind her, the mother stood tall, surrounded by a formation of elite guards. Her armor pulsed with symbolic runes, each one vibrating with the force of civilizations long vanished. Her presence was overwhelming, part warrior, part judge, part force of nature. But her gaze was entirely on her daughter. And in those burning silver eyes was something Tobias had not expected. Relief. Her voice echoed inside his mind. Human, you delivered her to safety. This debt will not be forgotten. Tobias tried to sit up. His body protested violently. Great, he grunted. Now maybe focus on the giant galaxy-killing freak that tried to vaporize us? Every warrior's head turned upward, and there he was. The herald descended slowly, as if gravity welcomed him instead of resisted him. His cloak rippled outward like liquid shadow, dripping wisps of unreality that dissolved the air around them. His mask reflected impossible scenes. Wars not yet fought, planets not yet born, futures that hurt Tobias's brain to process. When he spoke, his voice wasn't sound. It was truth. It vibrated through bone and memory. It reached into the parts of Tobias he never let anyone see. I have come, the herald said, for the key. Every alien warrior tensed. The mother stepped forward, power radiating from her like a second sun. You cannot have her, she commanded. The herald tilted his head, mirror mask fracturing into 100 shards of reflected futures. The child is not yours to protect, he said. She belongs to the continuum, to the end of all things. He raised a hand. Reality buckled. Tobias felt the stone beneath him shift, as if the world had suddenly become ideas instead of matter. Warriors around him staggered as their weapons flickered through states of existence. The child cried out and clutched Tobias's arm. Her mother roared, unleashing a psychic blast powerful enough to tear a crater into the platform. Light surged from her, blazing in symmetrical patterns, forming shields, spears, sigils. The herald stepped through all of it as if through smoke. Not slowed, not harmed, not even acknowledging it. Tobias struggled to stand. Every bone in his body screamed. Kid, he rasped, gripping her hand. What does he want with you? Why is he doing this? She turned to him, eyes shimmering with a grief far too ancient for someone her age. Because I am what wakes the city. The storm above burst open in a flash of violet. Ancient machines rose from the city's depths, floating on magnetic pillars. Engines pulsed with stored energy from an era forgotten. Patterns, mathematical, perfect, lit across structures that had slept for millennia. The entire city awakened like a sentient titan, and it recognized her. The herald stretched his hand toward the girl. The key, he said calmly, must open the gate. Her mother stepped between them, unleashing a scream that split the air and channeled all her power into a barrier of pure starlight. The herald touched it, and it shattered like glass. The shockwave threw warriors across the platform. Tobias wrapped himself around the child, protecting her as debris rained from the sky. His ears rang. His bones shook. The world blurred. When the dust settled, the herald stood a few meters away. Her mother lay on one knee, armor cracked, breath ragged. Move, he commanded her. She rose again, staggering, but unbroken. I will not. The herald tilted his head. You misunderstand, he said softly. I am not asking. He raised his hand, and space around the mother collapsed inward. Tobias didn't think. He didn't consider. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed the child and charged. Straight at the herald. A human. A regular man. Broken ribs. Half crippled. No powers. No plan. Just momentum, adrenaline, and the primal instinct to keep the kid alive. The herald turned slightly, curious. Almost amused. Human, he murmured. You are insignificant. Tobias swung the heavy metal shard he'd grabbed from the wreckage. The herald caught it effortlessly between two fingers. But the child touched the herald's arm, and everything changed. Light exploded. Not from her. From him. The herald froze, every mirror in his mask flickering. The child's voice entered his mind with the softness of a feather and the force of a neutron star. You cannot take me. I choose my path, not yours. The herald jerked violently. His cloak flared. His voice fractured into static. No, you are bound. You are written. You are predetermined. She pressed her small hand to his chest. No, a single word. Soft. Absolute. And the herald, this cosmic executioner, this world ender, fell backward as if struck by a supernova. His cloak disintegrated into particles. His mask cracked down the center. The ancient city roared, echoing her choice across every tower and conduit. The sky pulsed with approving fire. The storm began to collapse inward as the city reclaimed its power, sucking its own energy back into the towers. The herald's body warped, dissolving into fractured light. You have altered the pattern, he hissed, voice glitching through futures that would no longer happen. You have broken inevitability. She knelt beside him, touching his fading form with compassion he had never shown anyone. I choose life, she whispered. He reached for her, then shattered into a billion motes of light. Silence fell. The mother collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed by a mixture of awe and exhaustion. Her daughter turned to Tobias, eyes still glowing with cosmic power, but soft again. The storm dissipated. The city dimmed, and she threw her arms around Tobias, burying her face in his chest. You saved me, she whispered. Tobias held her tightly, ignoring the pain. Kid, you saved all of us. Her mother approached slowly. Her voice trembled. The debt my people owe you is beyond measure. You protected her, even from fate itself. Tobias breathed shakily. What happens now? The child pulled back, wiping her eyes. I have to stay, she said quietly. The city listens to me. The galaxy will, too. But, she took his hand. You will always be welcome here. Tobias nodded slowly. I'll come back. Promise. Her small fingers squeezed his. And for the first time since he met her, she smiled. Bright, pure, unburdened. As the mother's warriors surrounded them, as the city began to fold back into slumber, as the storm finally died, Tobias Mercer realized something he'd never expected. He hadn't just saved a child. He'd saved the future. And the future had saved him right back. The wandering star drifted through the quiet of deep space, repaired but still wearing the scars of the battle that rewrote fate. Tobias sat in the pilot's chair, sipping lukewarm coffee and listening to the soft hum of his ship, his old companion, his troublemaker, his home. Outside the viewport, a streak of silver light flashed past. A Talon escort vessel. Its commander's voice came through the calm, not demanding, not threatening, but respectful. Captain Mercer, the High Matriarch, sends her regards. Tobias smirked. Still not used to being on speaking terms with your entire empire. It is not common for a human to alter the path of destiny. Tobias leaned back. I didn't alter destiny. I just did what was right. There was a long pause. That, the commander said, is exactly why you did. The transmission cut. Tobias set the mug down and stared at the starfield. Somewhere out there, on a world that had awakened from millennia of sleep, a child with galaxy-shifting power was learning from her mother, learning from her people, learning from her choices, learning from him. He wondered if she was safe. He wondered if she was happy. He wondered when the universe would come knocking again. Because he knew it would. The galaxy was changing. Empires were trembling. Old enemies and old shadows would return. And when they did, the Talon child who defied inevitability would not face them alone. Tobias rested a hand on the console. Kid, he murmured into the silence, I hope you're ready for the future. Because something tells me we're not done. The wandering star drifted onward, its engines cutting a thin line of light through the dark. A reminder, a promise. A human freighter captain had stepped between danger and the innocent. And the universe would never be the same again.